I'm going to be real with you about something that happened to me back in 2017 during my second year at uni. I was 22, living in this budget student accommodation about 15 minutes from campus. The kind of place where the walls are paper thin and the heating works maybe half the time. My roommate was a guy called Ethan. We got paired up randomly through the university housing system. When we first met, he seemed sound enough. Skinny bloke, maybe 5 feet 10 inches, always wore these ratty band t-shirts and had this nervous energy about him. Studying computer science, spent most of his time gaming or coding. I was doing business management, so our schedules barely overlapped. Seemed like it'd work out fine. First month was completely normal. We'd make small talk in the kitchen, split the shopping for shared stuff like toilet paper and washing up liquid, standard roommate things. He was tidy enough, quiet, kept his door shut most of the time. I had no complaints. Then I started noticing he was around more than I'd thought. Like, I'd come back from a lecture at 2 in the afternoon and he'd be there. Leave for the gym at 6 in the morning and he'd be up, sitting in the living room with his laptop. I figured maybe he had a weird schedule or was skipping classes. Not my problem, really. But it started getting odd when I realized he was timing things. I'd get up to make breakfast, and within 2 minutes, he'd emerge from his room. Every single time. I'd come home from the library late at night, and before I even got my shoes off, his door would open and he'd pop his head out, ask how the studying went. Started feeling less like coincidence and more like he was listening for me. About 6 weeks in, I went out on a Friday night with my mates from course. Proper night out, didn't get back till maybe 3 in the morning, absolutely hammered. I stumbled into the flat, trying to be quiet, and went straight to the bathroom to throw some water on my face. When I came out, Ethan was standing in the hallway, just standing there in the dark. I jumped back, nearly smacked into the wall, asked him what he was doing up. He said he'd heard me come in and wanted to make sure I was all right. Fair enough, I suppose, but the way he said it felt off, too rehearsed. And he was fully dressed, like he'd been awake for hours. I laughed it off, said I was fine, just needed to sleep. Went to my room and locked the door. Don't know why I locked it that night, just felt like I should. The next morning I woke up with a splitting headache and stumbled to the kitchen for water. Ethan was already there, making eggs. He'd made extra and offered me some. I was too hungover to refuse. While we ate, he started asking me questions about my night. Where I'd gone, who I was with, what time I'd left, what time I'd got to each pub. Really specific stuff. I answered a few, but then told him I couldn't remember most of it, which was true. He got quiet after that, just stared at his plate for a bit, then got up and went to his room without a word. I figured I'd annoyed him somehow, but honestly, I was too rough to care. Over the next few weeks, Ethan started acting stranger. He'd make these comments that didn't quite make sense. Like once I mentioned I was meeting my girlfriend at this cafe in town, and he said, "The one on Market Street with the blue awning, yeah?" I'd never told him which cafe. When I pointed that out, he just shrugged and said he must have seen it on my phone when I was looking at the address. Except I hadn't looked at my phone around him that day. Another time, I came back from a weekend at home visiting my parents. I walked into my room and immediately felt like something was different. Nothing major, just this feeling. I started looking around and realized my desk drawers were slightly open. I always shut them fully, because otherwise they'd slide open on their own. Inside, my stuff had been gone through. Papers were in the wrong order. My passport wasn't where I'd left it. I went straight to Ethan's room and knocked. Asked him outright if he'd been in my room. He looked genuinely confused. Said, "No." Asked why I was asking. I told him about my drawers, and he suggested maybe I'd forgotten to close them properly before I left. Then he offered to help me check if anything was missing. Nothing was missing. That was the weird part. If someone's going to break into your room, surely they'd nick something, right? But everything was there, just moved around. I started getting paranoid, started taking photos of my room before I left, just to see if anything changed. And things did change. Small stuff. A book moved from one side of my desk to the other. My laptop charger unplugged when I definitely left it plugged in. My wardrobe door opened when I always kept it closed. I confronted Ethan again. This time, he got defensive, said I was being ridiculous, that maybe I was misremembering things. He suggested I was stressed from coursework and wasn't thinking clearly. The way he said it made me feel like I was going mad. Maybe I was misremembering, maybe I was stressed. But then my girlfriend came over one night. We were in my room watching a film on my laptop when she needed to use the loo. She came back looking uncomfortable, said she'd heard someone outside my door, not walking past, just standing there. I opened the door and the hallway was empty, but Ethan's door was cracked open slightly. It had been closed when we'd walked past earlier. My girlfriend didn't want to stay over after that. Said the flat gave her a weird vibe. I didn't argue. Things came to a head about 3 months into living there. I'd gone to a mate's flat for the evening to watch football. Told Ethan I'd be back late. But the match was rubbish, and I decided to leave at halftime. Got back to our place around 9:30 instead of midnight like I'd planned. I unlocked the front door as quietly as I could. Wasn't trying to sneak or anything. Just didn't want to make a racket. I walked down the hall toward my room and noticed my door was open, wide open. I always closed it when I left. I stepped into the doorway and froze. Ethan was in my room, sitting at my desk, going through my laptop. He had a USB stick plugged into it and was clicking through my files, my personal files. Photos, documents, everything. He didn't hear me at first. I just stood there watching him, trying to process what I was seeing. Then I said his name. Not loud, just normal volume. He spun around so fast he nearly fell off the chair. His face went white. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Then he started stammering out this excuse about how he thought I'd left my laptop on, and he was turning it off for me, didn't want it to overheat. Absolute nonsense. My laptop has a password. He couldn't have accessed anything unless he knew it. I asked him how he got into my laptop. He stood up, pulled the USB stick out, and said he didn't know what I was talking about. Started saying I was being paranoid again, that he was just trying to help. I lost it. Told him to get the hell out of my room. He did, but slowly, like he was reluctant to leave. As he walked past me, he said something that made my skin crawl. He said, "You're not going to tell anyone about this, are you? Because they won't believe you. You've got no proof." I slammed my door and locked it. Checked my laptop. He'd copied files, loads of them. Photos of me and my girlfriend. Personal statements for job applications. Bank statements I'd stupidly saved as PDFs, even old essays, all accessed within the last hour. I called campus security that night. They came round the next morning with someone from the housing office. I explained everything. They searched Ethan's room with his permission. He was calm the whole time, cooperative even. They didn't find anything. No USB stick, no copies of my files, nothing. The housing officer said that without evidence, they couldn't do much. Suggested we try mediation to resolve our differences. Mediation. Like we just had a disagreement about washing up. I refused. Said I wanted to move out. They said I'd have to pay around $800 to break the contract early. I didn't have that kind of money just lying around. but I also couldn't stay there anymore. My girlfriend's flatmate was moving out at the end of term, so I asked if I could take the room. She said yes. I started staying there most nights, only going back to my place to grab clothes and shower when I knew Ethan would be out. But I had to go back properly one more time to pack up my stuff. I arranged it for a Tuesday afternoon when Ethan had a lecture that ran till 5. I brought 2 mates with me to help move everything quickly. We got there at 2. Ethan's door was closed. I started packing up my room, my mates helping carry boxes down to the car. On my last trip back up, I needed to grab my towel from the bathroom. The door was closed, which was weird because I'd left it open. I opened it and nearly had a heart attack. Ethan was in there, sitting in the empty bathtub, fully clothed, just sitting there in the dark. He looked up at me and smiled. Not a friendly smile. Something else. He said, "Moving out then?" I didn't answer, just grabbed my towel and backed out. Told my mates we were leaving now. They could tell something was wrong from my voice. We grabbed the last few boxes and got out of there. I never went back. Left some stuff behind, didn't care. Slept at my girlfriend's place that night and barely slept at all. Kept thinking about him sitting in that bathtub, waiting for me. The university eventually waived the fee after I filed a formal complaint, and my girlfriend backed up the weird behavior she'd witnessed. They moved me officially to the new place, and I never saw Ethan again. Except I did see him, just once, about 4 months later. I was in the library, middle of the day, surrounded by people. I looked up from my laptop, and he was standing about 20 feet away, staring directly at me. Soon as we made eye contact, he turned and walked off. I checked my laptop that night, changed all my passwords, ran a virus scan, everything. Found a keylogger program hidden in my system files. It had been installed 3 months prior. Right around the time I first confronted him about going in my room. I'm 29 now, got my own flat, live alone. I still check my laptop for spyware regularly. The scariest thing about that whole experience wasn't what Ethan did. It was realizing how long he'd been doing it before I noticed. How many nights I'd slept in that flat while he was going through my things, watching me, collecting information about my life. And how easily he made me doubt my own reality when I started catching on. Sometimes I wonder what he was planning to do with all that information, what the end game was. But mostly I try not to think about it, because I don't think I actually want to know. I've always been into tech, not like a genius hacker or anything, but I know my way around a computer better than most people. I built my first PC when I was 16, learned basic coding in my early 20s, and by the time I hit 30, I was doing freelance web development from my flat in Manchester. The money was decent, the hours were mine, and I didn't have to deal with office politics. Perfect setup, really. About 8 months ago, I got curious about the dark web. I know, everyone says don't go poking around in places you shouldn't, but I wasn't looking for anything dodgy. I just wanted to see what all the fuss was about. You hear all these stories about hitmen and drug markets and stolen credit cards, and part of me thought it was mostly exaggerated nonsense. I mean, how bad could it really be? So, one night around 11, I downloaded the Tor browser. For those who don't know, Tor is basically how you access the dark web. It routes your connection through a bunch of different servers all over the world, making it nearly impossible to trace where you actually are. Takes forever to load anything because of all that bouncing around, but that's the price you pay for anonymity, I suppose. The first few times I went on there, it was honestly pretty boring. A lot of the sites were just forums where people argued about conspiracy theories or sold counterfeit designer bags. Nothing too mental. I found a few marketplaces that looked like budget versions of Amazon, except instead of books and electronics, they were selling weed and fake IDs. I never bought anything. I was just browsing, being nosy. Then I stumbled onto this site called The Library. Stupid name, I thought, but the description said it was a collection of rare and restricted information. I figured it would be like WikiLeaks or something, maybe some declassified government documents. I clicked through. The layout was dead simple, just a black background with white text, organized into categories. Most of it was exactly what I expected. Leaked corporate emails, hacked databases, that sort of thing. But then I saw a section labeled Private Archives, and my curiosity got the better of me. Inside were folders, hundreds of them. Each one had a random string of numbers and letters as a title, no actual names or descriptions. I clicked on one at random. It took ages to load, and when it finally did, I immediately regretted it. It was someone's entire life. Photos, scanned documents, social media screenshots, even medical records. Everything about this person, just sitting there for anyone to download. I closed it immediately. My stomach felt weird, like I'd just walked in on something I absolutely shouldn't have seen. I should have logged off right then, but I didn't. I kept clicking through folders, telling myself I was just trying to understand what this site actually was. Most of them were the same, complete digital profiles of random people. Some folders had video files too, which I didn't open because I wasn't about to go down that road. Then I found one folder that was different. The title was just a date, 15th of August, 2024. That was only 3 months before I'd found the site. I opened it, and inside were subfolders organized by city: London, Birmingham, Manchester. My chest tightened. I clicked on Manchester. There were maybe 20 folders inside. Each one had a street name. I recognized a few of them. They were all in my area, within a couple miles of where I lived. I clicked on one, and my hands started shaking. It was surveillance photos, dozens of them. People walking to their cars, unlocking front doors, sitting in cafes, all taken from a distance, like someone had been following them. I exited out of that folder and opened another. Same thing, different people, same creepy surveillance style. My brain was trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was some private investigator's files that got leaked. Maybe it was research for a documentary. But deep down, I knew it was something worse. I was about to close the browser and pretend I'd never seen any of it when I noticed one last folder. The file name was just a string of numbers, but the date modified was from 2 days ago. I clicked it. 3 photos loaded. My breath caught in my throat. It was me. The first photo showed me walking out of Tesco with a bag of groceries. I recognized the jacket I was wearing. I'd worn it earlier that week. The second photo was me sitting in my car, looking at my phone. The third was taken from across the street, showing me standing in my living room window. I slammed my laptop shut. My heart was hammering in my chest. I sat there for a good 5 minutes, just staring at the wall, trying to process what I'd just seen. Someone had been following me. Someone had taken photos of me and uploaded them to this site. But why? I wasn't anyone important. I didn't have enemies. I kept to myself. I opened the laptop again, hands still trembling, and tried to go back to the folder. The site wouldn't load. I refreshed it a dozen times. Nothing. I restarted Tor, cleared the cache, tried different entry nodes. The entire site was gone. It was like it had never existed. I didn't sleep that night. Every little noise in the building made me jump. I kept checking the window, half expecting to see someone standing on the pavement below, staring up at me. Around 4 in the morning, I finally crashed from exhaustion. The next day, I tried to convince myself I'd overreacted. Maybe the photos weren't even me. Maybe it was someone who looked like me. I went about my routine, grabbed a coffee from the shop down the road, came back and worked on a client's website. But I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about those photos. That evening, I found an envelope on my doormat. No stamp, no address, just my first name written on the front in block letters. I opened it. Inside was a printed screenshot of the folder I'd seen. My folder. And underneath it, a single sentence. You weren't supposed to find this. I genuinely felt sick. Someone knew I'd been on that site. Someone knew I'd seen the photos, and they knew where I lived. I called the police. I explained everything, showed them the envelope, told them about the dark website. The officer who came round was polite enough, but I could tell he thought I was winding him up. He took notes, said they'd look into it, but I could see in his face he wasn't taking it seriously. Probably just someone messing around, he said. Let us know if anything else happens. Nothing else happened for 3 days. I started to relax a bit, convinced myself maybe it really was just some twisted prank. Then on the 4th night, I got a message on my phone, unknown number. It was a photo of me sitting at my desk, taken from outside my window. The message below it said, "Still watching." I lost it. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and I left. I didn't pack a bag, didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just drove. I ended up at my mate's place in Liverpool, told him I needed to crash for a bit. He asked if everything was all right, and I just said I was having some work stress. I didn't want to explain the whole thing because it sounded mental, even to me. I stayed there for a week. I kept checking my phone, expecting more messages, but nothing came through. I started to think maybe leaving had scared them off. Maybe they'd moved on to someone else. I went back home on a Tuesday afternoon. Everything looked normal. I checked every room, every window, made sure all the locks were secure. I even bought a deadbolt and installed it on my front door. I felt a bit safer. That night, I was sitting on my sofa watching some rubbish on Netflix when my laptop, which I'd left closed on the coffee table, suddenly lit up. I hadn't touched it. I leaned forward and opened it. The screen was black except for a single line of text in the center. "We know you told the police." I shut the laptop again, my pulse racing. Someone had remote access to my computer. They'd been inside it the whole time. I grabbed the laptop, opened the back panel, and ripped out the hard drive. Then I smashed it with a hammer. I wasn't taking any chances. The next morning, I went to a tech repair shop and had them completely wipe my system and reinstall everything from scratch. I changed every password I had. I covered my webcam with tape. I even got rid of my phone and bought a new one with a new number. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. I started to feel like maybe I'd finally shaken them off. Then I got a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw a delivery driver holding a package. I opened the door and he handed it to me. I hadn't ordered anything. I brought it inside and opened it carefully. Inside was a USB stick and a note. The note said, "You can't hide." I didn't plug the USB into anything. I took it straight to the police station and handed it over. This time, they seemed to take me more seriously. They said they'd have their tech team analyze it and get back to me. 2 days later, a detective called me in. He told me the USB contained a heckload of malware designed to give someone complete access to whatever device it was plugged into. He also said they'd traced the package. It had been sent from a post office in Manchester, paid for in cash, no way to trace who sent it. The detective asked me if I had any idea who might be doing this. I told him everything again. The dark website, the folders, the photos. He listened, took more notes, and said they'd investigate. But I could tell from his tone that without more concrete evidence, there wasn't much they could do. It's been 3 months now I moved out of that flat. I'm staying with my parents in Leeds until I figure out what to do next. I don't freelance anymore. I got a normal job at a call center because I needed something that didn't involve sitting alone in front of a computer all day. I still look over my shoulder everywhere I go. I still check for unfamiliar cars parked on my street. I don't know who they are or what they wanted from me. Maybe I saw something I shouldn't have. Maybe I was just unlucky. But I know one thing for certain. The dark web isn't some abstract thing you hear about on the news. It's real, and the people on it are real, and some of them don't appreciate when you go poking around in their business. I don't talk about this much. Honestly, I try not to think about it at all. But every now and then, something will trigger a memory, and I'll get this heavy feeling in my chest that won't go away for hours. I'm 25 now, and what happened at my grandma's house feels like it belongs to a different lifetime. The details are fuzzy, the way childhood memories always are, but the fear, that part stayed crystal clear. I used to stay at my grandma's place all the time when I was a kid, probably from when I was about 8 until I was 12 or so. My parents worked late shifts, and it was easier for everyone if I just crashed at her house a few nights a week. Her place was this small bungalow at the end of a quiet street, the kind of neighborhood where everyone knew each other and nothing ever really happened. She'd been living there since before my dad was born, so the house had that old person smell, you know? Lavender and dust, and something else I could never quite place. The sleepovers were fine at first. Normal. We'd watch game shows, she'd make me toast with way too much butter, and I'd sleep on the pull-out sofa in the living room. But looking back now, trying to piece together what actually happened during those years, I realized there were things that didn't add up. Things I noticed, but didn't have the words for at the time. It started with the sounds. Or at least, that's the first thing I can remember clearly. I'd be lying on that sofa, staring at the ceiling, and I'd hear footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate footsteps, like someone pacing back and forth. The thing is, my grandma's bedroom was on the ground floor. There was an upstairs, sure, but it was just storage. Old furniture, boxes of my dad's childhood stuff, that sort of thing. She never went up there, especially not at night. Her knees were bad. I asked her about it once. She just waved her hand and said it was the house settling. But houses don't settle in a rhythm. They don't walk from one end of a room to the other, and then back again. Then there was her behavior. Little things that seemed off, but not enough to say anything about. She'd stand at the kitchen window for ages, just staring out into the back garden. Not doing anything, not washing dishes or watering plants. Just standing there, completely still. Sometimes for 20 minutes or more. When I'd ask what she was looking at, she'd snap out of it and smile, but it always took her a second too long to answer. She'd say something about watching the birds or checking the weather, but her eyes looked wrong, distant. The neighbors were weird too. There was this older man who lived 2 houses down, Mr. Peterson or Patterson, something like that. I'd see him in his front garden sometimes when I was arriving at Grandma's, and he'd always stop what he was doing to watch me walk up to her door. Not in a friendly way, just watching, with his hands on his hips, until I went inside. One time, I waved at him, and he didn't wave back. He just kept staring. My grandma never talked about him. Actually, now that I think about it, she never really talked about any of her neighbors. For someone who'd lived on that street for decades, she didn't seem to have any friends nearby. No one ever visited. No one called. It was just us. The worst nights were when I'd wake up in the middle of the night and see movement. Shadows that didn't match up with anything. I'd be lying there, half asleep, and I'd catch something shifting in the corner of my vision. When I'd turn my head to look properly, there'd be nothing there. But I know what I saw. Or at least, I think I do. It's hard to trust your own memory when you were just a kid, especially when everyone tells you that you were dreaming. But I wasn't always dreaming. I know that for a fact, because of what happened when I was 11. It was a Tuesday night, I remember, because I had a math test the next day, and I was trying to study at her kitchen table. Grandma had gone to bed early, said she had a headache. I stayed up for another hour or so, then pulled out the sofa bed and tried to sleep. I was just starting to drift off when I heard the back door open. Not the front door. The back door, which led out to the garden. I froze. The house was dead quiet except for the sound of the door slowly creaking open, and then footsteps. Not upstairs this time. Downstairs, in the kitchen. Heavy footsteps, heavier than my grandma's, moving slowly across the linoleum floor. I wanted to call out, to ask if it was her, but something stopped me. Some instinct told me to stay quiet and stay still. So I did. I lay there with my eyes squeezed shut, listening to whoever it was move around the kitchen. I heard them open the fridge, heard the sound of liquid being poured. Then footsteps again, moving toward the living room, toward me. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped right at the edge of the living room, maybe 10 feet from where I was lying. I could feel someone looking at me. I don't know how to explain it, but you know when you can feel eyes on you? It was like that, but worse, heavier. Then, after what felt like forever, the footsteps retreated, back through the kitchen, out the back door. The door closed, but I didn't hear it lock. I stayed frozen for another hour at least. When I finally worked up the courage to move, I crept into the kitchen and checked the back door. It was unlocked. I locked it and went back to the sofa, but I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I tried to tell my grandma what happened. She looked at me for a long moment, and I swear there was something in her expression that scared me more than the footsteps had. Not anger, something else. Fear, maybe, or guilt. She told me I'd had a nightmare. She said the door was faulty and sometimes popped open on its own. She said a lot of things, actually, talking faster than normal, almost like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. I didn't push it. I was 11. What was I supposed to do? But after that night, I started paying more attention, and that's when I noticed the really weird stuff. There'd be muddy footprints in the kitchen some mornings, too big to be my grandma's. Food would go missing from the fridge, entire meals worth. And sometimes, when I'd look out the window at night, I'd see a light on in the upstairs window. Just for a second, then it would go dark again. I stopped staying over as much after I turned 12, made excuses, said I wanted to sleep in my own bed. My parents thought I was just growing up, becoming more independent. They didn't push it. My grandma died when I was 19. Heart attack. Quick and painless, they said. When we were clearing out her house, my dad and I went up to the storage room for the first time in years. And that's when we found it. A mattress, on the floor, with blankets and pillows and empty food containers stacked in the corner. Someone had been living up there. For how long, I don't know. Could have been months. Could have been years. My dad went pale. He called the police, but there wasn't much they could do. No signs of forced entry. No indication of who it had been or where they'd gone. The working theory was that it was someone my grandma knew, maybe someone she was helping out, a homeless person, a relative who'd fallen on hard times. The police said she probably didn't tell anyone because she didn't want to get whoever it was in trouble. But that doesn't sit right with me. I remember the look on her face that morning when I told her about the footsteps. That wasn't the face of someone helping a friend. That was the face of someone who was scared. I've spent years trying to rationalize it, trying to make it make sense. Maybe it was exactly what the police said. Maybe my grandma was just being kind to someone in need. Maybe the weird behaviors, the staring out windows, the distant look in her eyes. Maybe that was just old age. Maybe the shadows I saw were nothing. Maybe the neighbor was harmless. Maybe I was just a scared kid with an overactive imagination. But late at night, when I can't sleep, I think about those footsteps. I think about how they stopped right at the edge of the living room. How whoever it was just stood there, watching me pretend to be asleep. And I think about all those nights I stayed there. All those nights I was alone in that living room while my grandma slept on the other side of the house. All those nights someone could have been upstairs, listening, waiting. I don't know what was worse. The idea that my grandma knew someone was living in her house and didn't tell me, or the idea that she didn't know and I was the only one who heard them. Either way, I can't shake the feeling that I was never really safe there. And the worst part? I'll never know for sure. Those memories are too blurry, too unreliable. But the fear isn't blurry. That part is as sharp as it ever was. I don't visit her grave much. I know I should, but every time I think about it, I remember that house. And I remember lying on that sofa, eyes squeezed shut, listening to footsteps that shouldn't have been there. Some things you just don't forget. I had this incident about 4 years ago, back when I was a junior at UMass. I was living in this massive, cheap apartment complex off campus called Grover Towers. It was one of those ugly 1970s concrete blocks that housed about 500 students and always smelled faintly of burnt popcorn and cheap weed. That year, I was broke. I mean, seriously broke. My bank account had maybe $50 in it, which wasn't enough for a bus ticket home to Ohio, let alone a flight. So when Thanksgiving rolled around, I was the only one left in my wing of the building. Everyone else had cleared out by Wednesday afternoon. It was weird how fast the place emptied out. One minute the hallways were full of people dragging suitcases and blasting music, and the next, it was dead quiet. By Thanksgiving Day, Thursday, the silence was heavy. It was eerie. If you've never been in a massive building that's designed for hundreds of people, but is completely empty, it messes with your head. Every little sound, the heating pipes clanking, the elevator humming somewhere distant, sounded 10 times louder than usual. I woke up around 11 a.m. It was gray and miserable outside, spitting rain mixed with sleet. My grand Thanksgiving plan was to order a pizza, maybe manage to find an open Chinese place, and binge watch a show I'd been saving. It wasn't glamorous, but I was okay with it. Around 1 p.m., I decided to head down to the basement to do laundry. I figured I might as well be productive, and I knew for a fact all the machines would be free. The basement of Grover Towers was sketchy on a good day. It was a maze of storage cages made of chain-link fencing, dimly lit by flickering fluorescent tubes that buzzed constantly. The laundry room was tucked way in the back. I took the stairs down from the 4th floor because the elevator was painfully slow. I had my laundry basket propped on my hip, listening to a podcast in one earbud. When I pushed open the heavy metal fire door to the basement level, the vibe was instantly off. It was freezing down there, way colder than usual, like someone had left a door to the outside open. I walked past the storage cages, my footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. I got to the laundry room, and sure enough, it was empty. Just rows of industrial washers and dryers sitting silent. I loaded my clothes into 2 washers, dumped in the soap, and started them up. The rush of water was the only sound down there. I checked my phone, 1:15 p.m. I set a timer for 30 minutes and headed back toward the stairs. As I was walking past the row of storage cages again, I stopped. One of the cages near the exit wasn't locked. The padlock was hanging open on the latch. Now, people in Grover were usually paranoid about their stuff. Bikes got stolen all the time. Seeing an open cage was rare. I'm not going to lie, I was nosy. I stepped closer to look inside. It was mostly junk, cardboard boxes, an old mini fridge. But in the middle of the floor was a sleeping bag laid out flat. And next to it, a small camping stove and a pile of canned food wrappers. It didn't look like stored camping gear. It looked like someone had slept there last night. A cold spike of adrenaline hit my stomach. I told myself it was probably just some student who got locked out or was too drunk to make it upstairs. It happened. I got out of the basement fast, double timing it up the 4 flights of stairs to my apartment, 4B. I locked the deadbolt behind me and tried to shake off the creeped out feeling. It's Thanksgiving, I told myself. Nobody is down there lurking in the dark. I killed the next half hour playing video games, but I couldn't focus. I kept turning the volume down to listen to the hallway. Nothing, just the radiator hissing. When my phone timer went off at 1:45 p.m., I really didn't want to go back down there, but my clothes were soaking wet in the machines. I grabbed my keys and headed back down. The stairwell was dead silent. I opened the basement door. The buzzing light seemed louder this time. I walked to the laundry room, moved my stuff to the dryers, and started them. I was just turning to leave when I noticed something on the folding table in the corner. It was a wallet, a brown leather bifold wallet just sitting there. It definitely wasn't there 30 minutes ago. My heart started hammering. Someone else was down here, right now. I should have just left. I should have bolted up the stairs. But stupid curiosity took over. I walked over to the table and picked up the wallet. It felt damp. I flipped it open. No cash. A couple of credit cards and a driver's license. The license was for a guy named Gary. He was 45 years old, from a town about 2 hours away. His photo looked rough. Stringy hair, sunken eyes, a nasty scar over his lip. This was definitely not a student. I shoved the wallet back onto the table like it was hot. I needed to get out of there. I turned around, and that's when I saw the mud. On the gray concrete floor, leading away from the laundry room and toward the darker back corner of the basement where the boiler room was, there was a trail of fresh, muddy boot prints. They were big. I didn't stick around to investigate. I ran. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my lungs burning. I got back to 4B, slammed the door, locked the deadbolt, and put the chain on. I stood there in my entryway, breathing hard. It was 2:10 p.m. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a maintenance guy was working on the boiler on the holiday? Yeah, right. That guy looked like he hadn't showered in a month in his ID photo. I decided I was staying in my apartment for the rest of the night. My wet clothes could rot in the dryer for all I cared. I wasn't going back down there. I ordered a pizza from Domino's, the only place open, and tried to watch a movie. The sun started going down around 4:30 p.m., casting long, weird shadows across my living room. The apartment felt way too big. The pizza guy showed up around 5 p.m. I almost didn't open the door, even though I was expecting him. When I did, I snatched the box, tipped him $5, and relocked the door instantly. I sat on my couch, eating pepperoni pizza in the dark, just the light of the TV flickering. Around 7:30 p.m., I needed to use the bathroom. My bathroom was near the front door of the apartment. As I was walking past the door, I heard something in the hallway. It was a soft sound. I froze. The hallway should have been completely empty. My neighbors on both sides, Jen and Mark, were gone for the week. I'd helped Jen carry her bags to her car yesterday. I crept up to the door and put my eye to the peephole. The hallway light was dim. One of the bulbs was flickering nervously. At first, I didn't see anything, just the long stretch of ugly brown carpet and the doors to the other apartments. Then, I saw movement near the elevator at the end of the hall. Someone was standing there, just standing, facing the elevator doors. It was a man. He was wearing an oversized, dirty green jacket and dark jeans. I couldn't see his face, but the jacket looked heavy and wet. I held my breath. He wasn't pressing the button. He was just standing there, perfectly still. Then slowly, he turned his head. He didn't look toward the elevator. He looked down the hallway, right toward my door. I pulled away from the peephole, my heart jumping into my throat. I recognized the jacket. It looked exactly like the one the guy in the driver's license photo would wear. I pressed my ear against the door, straining to hear. A heavy footstep, then another. Slow, deliberate steps coming down the hall. They stopped right in front of my door. I could hear him breathing on the other side of the thin wood. It was a wet, raspy sound. I stood there, paralyzed, praying he would just keep walking. Then the doorknob jiggled. It wasn't a violent attempt to get in. It was slow, almost testing. He turned it left, then right, hitting the locked deadbolt. I didn't make a sound. I thought if I stayed quiet, maybe he'd think the apartment was empty, just like the others. The jiggling stopped. For a solid minute, there was silence. I thought maybe he had gone. Then, there was a soft sound against the bottom of the door. He was shoving something underneath it. A piece of paper slid onto my entryway floor. I stared at it. It was a dirty, crumpled napkin. The footsteps started again, moving away, back toward the elevator. I heard the elevator ding, the heavy door slide open, then closed. The gears whined as it went down. I waited 5 minutes before I moved. I unhooked the chain, unlocked the deadbolt just enough to crack the door, and snatched the napkin off the floor. I relocked the door faster than I ever have in my life. I took the napkin into the kitchen and turned on the light. It was covered in grease stains and dirt. Written in the center, in shaky dark ink from a cheap pen, were 3 words. I see you. My blood ran cold. He knew I was in here. He'd been standing by the elevator, baiting me to look out. I didn't hesitate this time. I called 911. 911, what's your emergency? There's a man in my building, I whispered, huddled in my kitchen corner. Grover Towers. He just tried to get into my apartment. He slipped a note under my door. I think he's living in the basement. The dispatcher was calm, asked for descriptions. I told her about the sleeping bag, the wallet, Gary, the jacket, the note. She said officers were on their way. It took the cops 10 minutes to get there. Those 10 minutes felt like hours. I stood by my window, watching the street 4 stories down, waiting for the blue lights. Every creak in the apartment made me jump out of my skin. When the police arrived, they came up to my door first. 2 officers, looking serious. I showed them the note. I gave them the description. They went down to the basement. They were down there for a long time. When they came back up, the older officer looked grim. "You were right, son," he said. "Nobody down there now, but someone's been squatting in that storage cage for a while. Found the wallet you saw, Gary Wickersham. He's got a bunch of warrants out for burglary and assault 2 towns over. Seems like he's been using this place to lay low." They found more than just the sleeping bag. In the boiler room, back where the muddy footprints led, they found a stash of stuff stolen from apartments over the last few days. Laptops, jewelry, gaming consoles. He hadn't just gotten there. He'd been there all week, waiting for people to leave for the holiday so he could clean the place out. They never caught Gary that night. He must have slipped out a back exit when he heard the sirens. I didn't stay in the apartment that night. The cops let me crash on a couch in the lobby of the campus police station until morning. The next day, I borrowed $50 from a friend who got back early and took the first bus back to Ohio. I didn't care that I only had 2 days left of break. I wasn't spending another second in that building alone. I moved out of Grover Towers at the end of the semester. I couldn't handle the long, quiet hallways anymore. Every time I walked to my door, I expected to see that dirty green jacket standing by the elevator. I still hate Thanksgiving. People talk about being thankful for family and food. I'm just thankful my deadbolt held. I'm going to sit down and tell you something that happened to me about 4 years ago. Every Thanksgiving since then, I get this knot in my stomach that won't go away. Back then, I was living in this rental house outside Albuquerque with my girlfriend Emma. We'd been together about 2 years. The place was decent, one of those cookie-cutter developments where every house looks basically the same. Beige stucco, small yard, you know the type. Emma's family lived in Oregon, and mine was scattered all over, so we decided we'd just do our own quiet Thanksgiving at home. No traveling, no airport stress, just the 2 of us. We went to the grocery store on Tuesday, got a small turkey, all the fixings, grabbed a couple bottles of wine, the whole domestic thing. Wednesday night, we're both in the kitchen prepping stuff for the next day. I'm peeling potatoes. Emma's making this cranberry sauce her mom used to make. We're drinking wine, listening to music, having a good time. Around 9 o'clock, the doorbell rings. I wipe my hands off and go answer it. There's this woman standing on our porch. She's probably in her 50s, wearing this purple fleece jacket, and she's got this really apologetic smile on her face. She introduces herself as Linda from 3 houses down, the one with the blue trim. She's completely out of aluminum foil, needs some for tomorrow when her son's family comes over. The whole thing seemed totally normal. I mean, we'd been in the neighborhood for almost a year, but we didn't really know our neighbors. We were both busy with work, kept to ourselves mostly. I told her no problem and went back to check. Emma pointed me to the roll under the sink. I brought it to the door, handed it over. Linda thanked me, said she'd replace it on Friday, wished us a wonderful Thanksgiving. I closed the door and went back to the kitchen. Didn't think anything of it. We finished our prep, watched some TV, went to bed. Thanksgiving morning, Emma was up early, getting the turkey ready. I slept in until about 9, came downstairs in my sweatpants. The house already smelled amazing. We had the parade on TV, just being lazy and happy. Around 10:30, the doorbell rang again. I looked through the peephole. Same woman from last night, Linda, standing there with a roll of aluminum foil in her hand. I opened the door and she asked if she could come in for just a second. Said she had a little thank you gift for us. Something about it felt slightly off, but I couldn't put my finger on what. She seemed nice enough. I stepped back and let her in. She came into the entryway and I closed the door behind her. I noticed she wasn't holding anything except the foil. No bag, no plate of cookies, nothing. Before I could say anything, she turned around fast. That friendly smile was just gone. Her whole face had changed. Her eyes were completely flat. She asked where my girlfriend was, and the way she said it made my blood run cold. I took a step back and told her she needed to leave. Right now. Linda didn't move. She just stood there, blocking the doorway to the living room. I called out for Emma, loud. My voice had an edge to it that made Emma come running from the kitchen. She stopped dead when she saw Linda standing there, asked me who this was. I told her it was the neighbor from last night, but I didn't take my eyes off Linda. I said, I think she needs to go. Linda tilted her head, looking at Emma like she was examining something in a store. She made this comment about how we had a really nice setup, how cozy and private it was, how nobody was around to hear much of anything. Emma's voice went tight. She told Linda to get out. Linda reached into her jacket pocket. She pulled out a small black revolver. She told us both to sit down on the couch and do exactly what she said. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. We sat on the couch. My brain was screaming at me to do something, but the gun was right there, and my body wouldn't move. Linda stayed standing. She told us to give her our cell phones, slide them over. Mine was in my pocket. Emma's was on the coffee table. We both pushed them across the floor toward her. She explained we were going to wait for her partner to show up. Then they'd get started. I asked her what she meant by that, and my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Linda smiled then, that same friendly smile from the night before. She told us we had a nice house, lots of nice things. Said they'd been watching the neighborhood for a couple weeks. Thanksgiving was perfect because nobody was around. Everyone was with family. We were the only ones home on the whole street last night. Emma grabbed my hand. I could feel her shaking. I tried to bargain, told her to take whatever she wanted, the TV, laptop, cash upstairs. Take it all. We wouldn't call the cops. Linda said they were going to take it, but they needed to make sure we stayed calm while they worked. That's what the gun was for. I don't know how much time passed. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 30. The turkey was in the oven, and I could smell it cooking. The parade was still playing on the TV, people cheering and laughing. Everything about it felt insane. Then the doorbell rang. Linda looked toward the door and said that would be her partner. She told us not to move, not to make a sound. She walked to the door, keeping the gun pointed at us, and opened it. But the person standing there wasn't her partner. It was a cop, a police officer in full uniform, young guy, probably late 20s, standing on our porch holding a cardboard box. He said he had a package that was delivered to the wrong address, asked if this was 247 Meadowbrook. Linda froze, just for a second. Then that smile came back. She reached for the box and thanked him, but the cop's eyes had moved past her. He was looking into the house, looking at me and Emma sitting rigid on the couch. I don't know if he saw the terror on our faces, or if he spotted the gun that Linda was trying to hide behind the door. But something changed in his expression. He asked if everything was all right in there, and his hand moved to his belt. Linda slammed the door and spun around, raising the gun toward us. The door crashed open. The cop had kicked it in, and he had his gun out. He yelled at her to drop the weapon. Everything happened fast after that. Linda dropped the gun and put her hands up. The cop called for backup. Within minutes, there were 3 more police cars in our driveway. Turns out Linda wasn't even her real name. It was Denise Crawford. and she had a whole string of warrants out for armed robbery. She and her boyfriend had been hitting houses in developments like ours for months, always during holidays when people were distracted or away. They'd watch neighborhoods, figure out who was home alone, who had nice stuff. The boyfriend got picked up an hour later at a gas station 2 miles away. Officer Ramirez told us later that the package thing was pure luck. Someone 3 houses down had ordered something that got delivered to us by mistake. He was just doing a good deed, dropping it off on his patrol. If he hadn't shown up right then, if Linda had had another 5 minutes before her partner arrived, I don't know what would have happened. The detectives told us later that in 2 of their previous robberies, the homeowners ended up in the hospital. We moved out of that house 2 months later. Couldn't stay there. Emma and I broke up about a year after that. We don't really talk about it, but I think we both just associated each other with that day. I haven't celebrated Thanksgiving properly since. Can't do it. Last year, I just ordered Chinese food and watched movies by myself. The whole holiday feels poisoned now. The piece that really messes with me is how normal it all seemed at first. Someone asking to borrow foil. That's such a small, neighborly thing. And I let her in the next day because she seemed nice, because it felt rude not to. I'm more careful now. Way more careful. I don't answer the door unless I'm expecting someone. I don't trust friendly strangers. Maybe that makes me paranoid, but I don't care. That's my Thanksgiving story. Not ghosts, not some supernatural thing. Just a woman with a gun and a smile, and the worst timing in the world for her. This happened 2 years ago, and I'm not going to lie, it completely wrecked the holidays for me. You know how people say Thanksgiving is about family and gratitude? For me, it's just a reminder of how thin the line is between a normal, boring afternoon and a total nightmare. I was 29 at the time, living in Chicago. My parents still lived in the house I grew up in, about 3 hours away in a quiet, spread-out suburb in Michigan. It's one of those neighborhoods where the houses are set back from the road, lots of trees, long driveways. Real quiet, dead quiet at night. I usually drove up on Thanksgiving morning, but that year I decided to head out on Wednesday afternoon. My boss let us go early, and I figured I'd beat the traffic, surprise my folks, and maybe help my mom with the prep work. She's getting older, and wrestling a 20-pound turkey isn't exactly easy for her anymore. The drive was uneventful, just gray skies and the endless stretch of I-94. I remember feeling pretty good. I had a podcast playing, a coffee in the cup holder, just chilling. I called my mom around 4 p.m. when I was about an hour out. "Hey Ma," I said, "I'm making good time. Be there by 5. She sounded stressed. "Oh honey, that's great, but we're running behind. Your dad and I had to run to the store for more heavy cream and the pumpkin mix I forgot. Then we decided to grab a bite at that diner you like. We probably won't be home until 6:30. "No worries," I told her. "I'll just let myself in. Keys under the fake rock, right?" "Always," she said. "Make yourself at home. There's beer in the basement fridge. Just don't eat the deviled eggs. Those are for tomorrow." We hung up. I felt a little relieved, honestly. An hour alone in the childhood home meant I could decompress, change out of my work clothes, and maybe catch the end of whatever football game was on without my dad yelling at the refs every 5 seconds. I pulled into the driveway at 5:15 p.m. on the dot. It was already getting dark. The house looked exactly the same as it always did. A big 2-story colonial with white siding and black shutters. The porch light wasn't on, which made sense since they were out. I parked my Jeep, grabbed my duffel bag, and walked up to the front door. I kicked the little plastic gray rock by the planter grabbed the spare key, and unlocked the door. The second I stepped inside, I was hit with that smell. You know the one. Every house has a smell, but your parents' house hits you right in the gut. It was a mix of vanilla candles, old wood, and faint laundry detergent. It felt safe. I locked the deadbolt behind me, habit from living in the city, and dropped my bag in the foyer. "Hello?" I called out, just out of instinct. Silence. Just the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen and the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. I walked into the kitchen. It was spotless. My mom is a neat freak before holidays. The counters were clear. The table was set with the good china plates turned upside down so they wouldn't collect dust. It was picture perfect. I went to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and then headed into the living room. I turned on the TV, found the game, and flopped onto the couch. It was the Cowboys game, I think. I wasn't really paying attention. I was just scrolling on my phone, texting my girlfriend back in the city, telling her I made it safe. Everything was normal, totally mundane. About 20 minutes went by. The house was warm, a little too warm, actually. I figured my dad had cranked the heat up before they left. I took off my hoodie, leaving me in just a t-shirt, and decided to go upstairs to put my bag in my old bedroom. I walked up the stairs. The carpet was thick and muffled my footsteps. When I got to the landing, I noticed the door to my parents' bedroom was closed. That wasn't weird by itself, but usually they kept all the doors open to let the heat circulate. I walked past their room toward mine at the end of the hall. As I passed their door, I heard a sound. It was soft, like someone dropping a heavy book on a carpet. I stopped. I stood there in the hallway, holding my breath. The house was old. It settled all the time. Pipes groaned, floorboards creaked. I told myself it was nothing. Then I heard the same sound again, a shuffling sound, like fabric rubbing against fabric. "Dad?" I called out. My heart did a little skip. Maybe they beat me home. Maybe they came in through the garage while I was watching TV. From inside the room, a voice answered. "Yeah, just a second." It was muffled by the heavy wood door. It sounded deep, a bit groggy. "I thought you guys were at the diner," I said, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. I didn't hear the garage door open. "Came in the back," the voice said. "Changing clothes. Be down in a minute." "Okay," I said. "I'm gonna unpack." I went to my room, threw my bag on the bed, and started unpacking my toiletries. But something was nagging at me, a weird, cold feeling in the pit of my stomach. I stopped what I was doing and stared at the wall. My dad had hip surgery 3 months ago. He walked with a heavy limp. I hadn't heard any footsteps coming up the stairs while I was in the living room. And the back door? The back door leads to the patio, which has a sliding glass door with a security bar that my dad is obsessed with using. You can't open it from the outside without making a heckload of noise. And the voice. It sounded like a man, yeah. But my dad has this very specific way of speaking. He has a slight whistle in his nose when he talks loud, and he calls me Sport or Mikey. Never just nothing. "Paranoid," I whispered to myself. "You're being paranoid." I decided to go check the garage. If they were home, their Buick would be there. I walked back out into the hallway. My parents' door was still shut. The silence felt heavier now. I walked down the stairs, trying to be casual, but my muscles were tight. I went through the kitchen to the door that leads to the garage. I opened it and flipped the light switch. Empty. My Jeep was in the driveway. The garage was completely empty. My blood turned to ice water. I stood there staring at the empty concrete slab, my brain trying to do the math. If the car isn't here, they aren't here. So who the hell is in the bedroom? I quietly closed the garage door. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it was going to bruise. I needed to get out. I needed to leave right now. I turned around to head for the front door and realized something odd. On the kitchen counter, right next to the knife block. When I had come in earlier, the counters were clear, I was sure of it. But now, sitting right there on the granite, was a wet, muddy pair of work boots. They were massive. They were caked in fresh mud, and there were little clumps of dirt trailing from the back door, the sliding glass door, across the pristine linoleum. I hadn't noticed them because I'd been looking at the fridge, but the trail went right through the kitchen, into the front hall, and up the stairs. I looked at the knife block. The big carving knife, the one my dad sharpened every year for the turkey, was missing. The slot was empty. The realization hit me like a physical punch. The person upstairs wasn't changing clothes. They were waiting, and I had just had a conversation with them. I had let them know exactly where I was. I didn't scream. I didn't run. Instinct took over. The instinct to be silent. I took a step toward the front door, moving as softly as I could. The living room TV was still on, the crowd cheering at some touchdown. That was my cover. I reached the foyer. The front door was 10 feet away. A loud sound came from directly above me, the floorboards on the landing. I froze. I looked up at the ceiling. The footsteps were moving fast now, heavy, not shuffling anymore. He was coming to the stairs. I bolted. I didn't care about noise anymore. I lunged for the deadbolt I had locked earlier. My fingers fumbled with the latch. It felt slippery. My hands were sweating so bad. "Mikey?" The voice came from the top of the stairs. It wasn't muffled anymore, and it definitely wasn't my dad. It was high-pitched, mocking, a frantic, jagged tone that didn't sound right coming from a grown man. I threw the bolt back and ripped the door open. I sprinted out onto the porch, down the steps, and across the lawn. I didn't even go for my car. I just ran to the middle of the street, into the light of the street lamp. I spun around, gasping for air, looking back at the house. The front door was wide open. The hallway was empty. But in the window of my parents' bedroom, the room where the door had been closed, the curtains were twitching. I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911. My hands were shaking so bad, I almost dropped it. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone in my house, I choked out. I'm outside. He has a knife. As I was talking to the dispatcher, I saw headlights sweep across the street. A beige Buick turned the corner and started slowing down for the driveway. My parents. I have never felt a fear like that. It wasn't for me anymore. "No!" I screamed, waving my arms frantically. I ran toward their car. "Dad, Mom, don't stop. Keep driving." My dad slammed on the brakes right in the middle of the road. He rolled down the window, looking confused and terrified. "Mike, what the hell is going on? Get out of here," I yelled, grabbing the door handle. "There's a man inside. Go, drive." My dad didn't argue. He saw the look on my face. He hit the gas and peeled out, driving 100 yards down the street before pulling over. The police were there in 4 minutes. It felt like 4 hours. They surrounded the house, guns drawn, dogs barking, the whole 9 yards. They went in through the front door. I stood by the squad car with my parents, my mom crying into my shoulder, my dad gripping my arm so hard it hurt. We waited. After about 10 minutes, an officer came out. He holstered his weapon and walked over to us. He looked grim. "Did you find him?" I asked. "The house is clear," the officer said. "Back slider was open. He must have bolted into the woods when he heard the sirens. They didn't catch him, not that night. But that's not the part that keeps me up at night. The police did a sweep of the house for evidence. They found the muddy boots on the counter. They found the missing carving knife under my bed. He had been in my room before I got there. And then they went into the attic. The access panel is in the ceiling of the walk-in closet in my parents' room. The officer told us it looked like someone had been living up there for a while. Maybe a week. There was a sleeping bag, a bucket for, well, and food wrappers. But the detective called me in to see something they found on the attic floor, right near the vent that looks down into the living room. It was a notebook, a cheap, spiral-bound school notebook. "You need to see this," the detective said. "It looks like he was keeping a log." I opened it. The handwriting was jagged, erratic, done in heavy charcoal pencil. Day 1, the old man sleeps on the left side, heavy snorer, leaves the window cracked. Day 3, the woman buys the wrong milk. She spills things. It went on like that. Mundane observations. But then I got to the last page. The ink was fresh. The son is home early. He sat on the couch. He looks just like his pictures. And below that, there was a drawing. It was a sketch of the living room, done from a high angle, looking down from the ceiling vent. In the sketch, I was on the couch, looking at my phone. But drawn right behind the couch, crouched low on the floor, was a dark figure. I looked at the detective, confused. "I don't understand. I checked the room. I didn't see anyone." The detective pointed to a line in the police report regarding the living room. "We found disturbed dust bunnies and mud prints behind the sofa, Mike. He wasn't upstairs when you first came in. He wasn't in the attic." My stomach dropped out of my body. "When you came in," the detective said, "he was in the living room, hiding behind the couch while you watched TV. He watched you for 20 minutes. He only went upstairs when you went to the kitchen to get a water." That sound I heard? The thump upstairs? That was him running away from me to hide in the bedroom because I had blocked his exit to the garage. I had sat there eating chips, texting my girlfriend, completely relaxed, and the whole time a man with a knife was less than 2 feet away from the back of my head, just breathing and waiting for me to close my eyes. We sold the house a month later. My parents couldn't step foot in it again. Neither could I. They eventually caught the guy a few weeks later, trying to break into another house 2 towns over. Just a drifter, they said. Mental health issues. But every Thanksgiving, when the family gets quiet and everyone is watching the game, I can't sit on a couch if it's not pushed against a wall. And I can't help but look up at the vents, wondering if someone is up there, sketching my picture, waiting for dinner to be served. I moved into my apartment in Portland about 8 months ago. It's this older building in the Selwood neighborhood, nothing fancy, but the rent was decent and it had this great view of the city from the living room window. The place is on the 3rd floor, which I liked because it felt safer being up high, no ground level windows for anyone to mess with. Anyway, this happened back in March. I'd been working from home that week because my office was doing some renovations. Around 9 p.m., I wrapped up some emails and decided to order food. I wasn't in the mood to cook, so I pulled up one of those delivery apps and ordered from this Thai place I'd been wanting to try. The app said it'd be about 45 minutes, which was fine. Gave me time to finish up some work stuff. While I was waiting, I kept hearing this weird scraping sound coming from somewhere in the building. At first I thought it was my upstairs neighbor moving furniture or something. The walls in these old buildings are pretty thin, so you hear everything. But then I realized it was coming from below me, not above. It would stop for a few minutes, then start again. Just this consistent scraping, like metal on concrete. I tried to ignore it and focus on my laptop, but it kept nagging at me. After about 20 minutes, my phone buzzed. It was a text from the delivery driver saying he was 5 minutes away. I got up and went to the kitchen to grab a plate, and that's when I noticed my apartment door was slightly open. Not wide open, just cracked about an inch. Enough to see into the hallway. My stomach dropped. I know for a fact I locked that door when I came home from my run earlier. I always lock it. It's basically automatic at this point. I stood there staring at it for a second, trying to rationalize it. Maybe I didn't pull it shut all the way. Maybe the latch didn't catch. I walked over slowly and pushed it closed, making sure I heard the lock click this time. Then I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The fluorescent lights were flickering like they always did, casting these weird shadows. Nothing seemed out of place. The delivery guy showed up right after that. I opened the door, grabbed my food, and made sure to lock it again. I even tested the handle twice. As I was eating at my kitchen counter, I couldn't shake this uncomfortable feeling. Something felt off. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting it to swing open again. Around 10:30, I decided to take a shower. I brought my phone into the bathroom with me, which I don't usually do, but I felt better having it close. The whole time I was in there, I kept thinking I heard noises over the sound of the water. You know that paranoid feeling where every little sound seems amplified? It was like that. I finished up quick and got dressed. When I came out, I checked my phone and saw I had a missed call from a number I didn't recognize. Portland area code, but not saved in my contacts. No voicemail. I figured it was probably spam and ignored it. But then, maybe 2 minutes later, the same number called again. This time, I answered. Hello? Nothing. Just silence on the other end. Not even background noise or breathing, just dead air. Hello? I said again, a bit louder. Still nothing. After about 10 seconds, they hung up. I stood there looking at my phone, feeling increasingly uneasy. 2 calls back to back with no one talking? That's weird. I blocked the number and tried to brush it off. I went back to the living room and turned on the TV, hoping to distract myself with something mindless. I settled on this documentary about deep-sea creatures, volume low so I could still hear if anything happened in the apartment. About halfway through, my phone rang again. Different number this time, but also local. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this Nathan? A woman's voice, older, kind of raspy. Yeah, who's this? I'm calling from the leasing office. We had a maintenance request submitted for your unit earlier today regarding a water leak. Did you submit that? I sat up straighter. No, I didn't submit anything. There's no leak here. There was a pause. That's strange. It says here it was called in around 3 p.m. Someone reported water coming through your floor into the unit below you. I've been home all day. There's definitely no leak. My floor is completely dry. Another pause. Longer this time. Okay, well, we'll look into it on our end. Sorry to bother you this late. Wait, I said before she could hang up. Did whoever called in say they were me? Like, did they claim to be the tenant? I'm not sure. Let me check the notes. I heard some typing. It just says the call came from this unit number. Assumed it was you. My hands felt cold. Someone else called pretending to be from my apartment? I don't know all the details. Look, I'll have our property manager reach out tomorrow to sort this out, okay? If you notice any water issues, let us know. She hung up before I could ask anything else. I immediately went to check my floor in every room. Bathroom, kitchen, bedroom, living room, everything was bone dry. No signs of water damage anywhere. Who the hell would call in a fake maintenance request for my apartment? Then it clicked. If someone called saying there was a leak coming from my unit, maintenance might have a reason to come up here, or someone pretending to be maintenance. My door being cracked open earlier suddenly felt a lot more sinister. I checked the door again, still locked. I pushed my couch up against it for extra security, which probably wouldn't do much, but made me feel slightly better. Then I went around checking all my windows. They were all closed and locked, except for the one in my bedroom, which I'd left open a crack for air. I shut it and locked it. It was almost midnight at this point. I tried to calm down and tell myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was just a mix-up with the apartment numbers. Maybe someone on the second floor had a leak and got the floors confused. But that didn't explain my door being open. That didn't explain the silent phone calls. I was sitting on my couch, trying to decide if I should call the police or if I'd sound crazy, when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside. They stopped right in front of my door. I held my breath and waited. After a few seconds, there was a soft knock. I didn't move, didn't make a sound. The knock came again, a little louder this time. "Maintenance," a man's voice said from the other side. "We got a call about a water leak." My heart was pounding so hard, I could feel it in my throat. I looked at the time on my phone. 12:07 a.m. No way was this actual maintenance at midnight. I stayed silent. Whoever was out there waited for probably a full minute before I heard the footsteps move away, but they didn't go far. They stopped a few doors down, and I heard the sound of keys jingling, then nothing. I crept over to the peephole as quietly as I could and looked out. The hallway was empty again, but now I was completely freaked out. I grabbed my phone and called 911, told them everything: the open door, the calls, the fake maintenance guy. The dispatcher said they'd send someone over to check it out. While I was waiting for the cops, I went to my bedroom to grab my shoes in case I needed to run. That's when I saw my bedroom window, the one I'd just locked, was open again. Not just unlocked, fully open, like someone had slid it up from the outside. I live on the 3rd floor. There's a fire escape, but it's on the other side of the building. The only way someone could reach my window is with a ladder. And that scraping sound I'd heard earlier, the metal on concrete sound from below. Someone had been setting up a ladder. I ran back to the living room and called 911 again, told them someone was trying to get into my apartment right now. The dispatcher kept me on the line. I could hear sirens getting closer. The police showed up about 6 minutes later. They searched my apartment and didn't find anyone inside, but when they checked the alley behind the building, there was a ladder leaning against the wall right below my bedroom window. They found footprints in the dirt below it too. What really messed me up was what one of the officers told me. Apparently, there'd been a string of break-ins in the area over the past month. The guy would call in fake maintenance emergencies to scout out which apartments were occupied, then come back later to break in. He'd been hitting buildings in Selwood and nearby neighborhoods. They'd been trying to catch him, but hadn't had any luck yet. The officer said I got lucky. If I hadn't noticed the door being open, if I hadn't checked the windows, he probably would have gotten in while I was asleep. They had me file a full report and said they'd increase patrols in the area. I stayed with a friend that night. Couldn't bring myself to sleep in that apartment. When I came back the next day to grab some stuff, the landlord had already installed new locks and window guards. They were taking it seriously, at least. The thing that keeps me up at night isn't even the break-in attempt itself. It's knowing that someone was watching me closely enough to know my routine, to know which apartment was mine, to plan all of this out. The fake maintenance call, the silent phone calls to see if I'd answer, testing my door. It was all calculated. They never caught the guy. A few weeks later, the break-ins just stopped. Either he moved to a different area, or he finally got spooked. But every time I hear footsteps in my hallway now, every time someone knocks on my door, I still check that peephole first and make sure it's actually who they say they are. I'm gonna be honest with you, I've been putting off writing about this for a while now. It happened back in November, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I still get this weird feeling in my stomach whenever I think about it. I was 26 at the time, working this dead-end job at a distribution center just outside Manchester. The pay was decent enough to cover rent and bills, but that was about it. I was living in this flat on the 3rd floor of a converted Victorian house. Nothing special, just your standard 1-bedroom setup with paper-thin walls and a landlord who refused to fix anything unless you threatened to involve the council. The building had 6 flats total, 3 on each side. I knew most of my neighbors by sight, but we weren't exactly mates, just the occasional nod in the hallway or awkward small talk while checking the post. There was this older woman directly below me who always complained about noise, even though I barely made any. Across from her was a young couple who argued constantly. On my floor, there was me, an empty flat that had been vacant for months, and this guy named Martin who worked night shifts at a hospital. I rarely saw him because our schedules were completely opposite. It was a Friday night, around 10:30 or so. I'd just gotten home from work and was absolutely knackered. My shift had been brutal. We'd been short-staffed all week, which meant everyone had to pick up the slack. I grabbed a quick shower, threw on some joggers and a t-shirt, and ordered a kebab from this place down the street that I used way too often. While I was waiting for the food, I decided to crack open a beer and just zone out in front of the TV. I wasn't even really watching anything, just flipping through channels without paying attention. The kebab arrived maybe 20 minutes later. I ate it while watching some documentary about World War II submarines that I definitely wasn't retaining any information from. By midnight, I was ready to call it a night. I turned off the TV, brushed my teeth, and was about to get into bed when I heard something. It was this faint clicking sound coming from somewhere outside my flat. At first, I thought it might be the radiator or the pipes doing their usual thing. The heating in that building was ancient and made all sorts of weird noises. But this was different. It was rhythmic, deliberate. I stood there in my bedroom doorway, just listening. The clicking stopped for a few seconds, then started again. It was coming from the direction of the front door. My stomach dropped. I walked slowly into the main room, trying not to make any noise. The flat was dark, except for the streetlight coming through the window. I moved toward the door and pressed my ear against it, holding my breath. That's when I heard it clearly. Someone was messing with the lock. I'm not going to lie, I absolutely panicked. My first thought was that it had to be Martin from across the hall. Maybe he'd locked himself out and was trying to get into the wrong flat by mistake. But that didn't make sense because the clicking was too persistent, too focused. I looked through the peephole and saw absolutely nothing. Just the dim hallway light and the door to the empty flat across from me. Whoever was out there must have been standing to the side, out of view. The clicking continued for what felt like ages, but was probably only 30 seconds or so. Then it stopped. Complete silence. I waited there with my heart absolutely hammering in my chest, not knowing what to do. Should I open the door? Should I call the police? I decided to wait it out. Maybe whoever it was had given up, and left. I slowly backed away from the door and grabbed my phone off the coffee table. I was about to dial 911 when I heard footsteps in the hallway. They were slow and deliberate, moving from one end of the corridor to the other. Then they stopped. A few seconds later, I heard the same clicking sound. But this time, it was coming from Martin's flat. Someone was trying to break into his place too. This wasn't a mistake. Someone was going door to door, trying to get into the flats. I immediately called the police and explained what was happening. The operator told me to stay inside, keep the door locked, and don't make any noise. She said officers were on their way, but it might take 10 to 15 minutes. I told her I understood and hung up, then just stood there in the darkness, listening. The clicking at Martin's door continued for a bit longer than it had at mine. Whoever this was seemed more determined to get into his flat. I couldn't figure out why until I remembered Martin worked nights. His flat would be empty. Much easier target than mine, where someone was clearly home. The clicking finally stopped, and the footsteps moved again, this time heading toward the stairwell. I thought maybe they were leaving, but instead I heard them going down to the second floor. I crept over to my window and looked out onto the street below. There was a white van parked directly in front of the building with its engine running. I couldn't see anyone inside because of the angle, but the exhaust was visible in the cold November air. My mind started racing. Was this a burglary? Were there multiple people involved? The fact that there was a van waiting outside made the whole thing feel a lot more organized and professional than just some random opportunist trying their luck. I heard more footsteps below me, moving around on the second floor. Then I heard a door open. Not being forced open, just opened normally, like someone had a key. My blood went cold. Had they actually managed to get into one of the flats downstairs? I was about to call the police again when I heard shouting. It was a woman's voice, the older lady who lived below me. She was screaming at someone to get out. Then I heard heavy footsteps running, followed by the sound of the main door to the building slamming shut. I ran back to the window and saw two figures sprint out of the building and jump into the van. They took off immediately, tires screeching as they turned the corner, and disappeared. Less than a minute later, two police cars pulled up with their lights flashing. I grabbed a hoodie, threw it on, and went downstairs. The scene was chaos. The older woman was standing in the hallway in her dressing gown, crying and talking to one of the officers. Another officer was checking the doors on the second floor. I explained to one of them what I'd heard and showed them my door, pointing out the scratches around the lock that I hadn't noticed before. Fresh scratches. They took my statement and checked the entire building. Turns out, they'd managed to get into the empty flat on my floor using some kind of tool, but there was nothing inside worth taking. They'd also tried Martin's flat, but didn't get in. The woman downstairs had woken up when she heard her door being opened. Apparently, she hadn't locked her deadbolt, just the regular lock, which they'd picked easily. She'd screamed as soon as she saw someone standing in her doorway, and that's what scared them off. The police told us there'd been a string of similar break-ins across the area over the past few weeks. Always the same method. Always targeting buildings with multiple flats. Always working quickly and methodically. They were professionals, clearly. The officers advised everyone to make sure they were using all available locks and to consider getting additional security. They stayed for about an hour, took photos, dusted for prints, the whole hit routine. After they left, I went back upstairs and checked my door about 15 times to make sure it was properly locked. I pushed my sofa up against it for good measure, even though I knew that was probably pointless. I didn't sleep at all that night, I just sat there on my bed, fully clothed, listening to every single sound in the building, every creak, every footstep from the people below, every car passing on the street outside. By the time the sun came up, I felt completely exhausted, but still way too wired to actually rest. The next day, I went out and bought the most heavy-duty deadbolt I could find and installed it myself. I also got one of those door chains and a wireless camera that pointed at my door from inside. Probably overkill, but I didn't care. The woman downstairs ended up moving out within a week. Can't say I blamed her. Martin got a better lock fitted as well, and the landlord finally agreed to install a proper security door at the main entrance, though it took him nearly 2 months to actually do it. The police never caught the people who did it, at least not as far as I know. They never followed up with me after that initial night, and when I called to ask a few weeks later, they just said the investigation was ongoing. I stayed in that flat for another year before my lease was up, and honestly, I never felt comfortable there again. Every time I came home late, I'd check the hallway before going to my door. Every unexpected noise would make me freeze up and listen. It properly messed with my head. What bothers me most, even now, is how close they came to getting in. Another minute or two, and they might have actually made it through my lock. Then what? Would they have run when they realized someone was home? Or would things have gone very differently? I try not to think about it too much, but it's hard not to, especially on nights when I'm home alone and I hear something that doesn't sound quite right. I know statistically, it's just normal building sounds, but that doesn't stop the little voice in the back of my head from wondering. I moved to a different area after that, somewhere with better security and fewer flats per building. I've never had any problems since, but I'm definitely more careful now. I always use every lock available. I always check who's at the door before opening it, and I never ever assume I'm safe just because I'm on the 3rd floor, or because it's a decent neighborhood. Because the truth is, it can happen anywhere, to anyone, at any time, and that's the part that really stays with you.